Austin Simmons had a major bounce back in the second scrimmage, and I am positive we are going to keep a level head about this.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, the most watched Ole Miss podcast around. I am your host, Steven Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media with Yahoo Sports and a former Ole Miss staff member as well. On today's show, we will close out with betting lines from our friends at FanDuel, including a ranked Farmageddon matchup in Ireland that kicks off week 0 in style. We'll look at all the lines this weekend. Next up, Lane Kiffin makes a splash by bringing back a Rebel legend in Donte Moncrief and a player personnel road, just as we suggested on this very podcast a month ago. But first, we start with the scrimmage chatter coming out of Saturday. And no, we are not going to take this too far. But let's just say Austin Simmons had himself a big day. And this front seven, they are looking really, really good. Never mind. Let's overreact. We're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thank you very much for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day. And a special hello to our everydayers who make the show what it is. And that is the most fun way to follow Ole Miss sports. So do us a favor, subscribe and to the YouTube channel. Subscribe to the podcast on the audio form. Like and comment on the video as well. Leave a 5-star review. It costs absolute nothing, but keeps all of this free. But if you want more, the Insiders program on the subtext link below, it has no trolls, a 14-day free trial, and the easiest way to cancel ever. So give that a try as well. So don't forget to check out a second listen on the network. Nearly every team, college or pro, is ready for you. And coming up on Ole Miss Trivia today, the clue is 1997 Arkansas. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. So Austin Simmons had himself a rough scrimmage the first time he went out a week ago. 2 pick sixes, threw another interception as well. Got kind of fooled on a robber on the defense. We talked all about that and talked about whether or not it was a trend or just an off thing to not really pay attention to. Austin Simmons had himself a little bit of a day yesterday in the Ole Miss scrimmage, or Saturday in the Ole Miss scrimmage. He had 3 touchdowns passing, another touchdown on the ground. It was as it was told to me, he was taking what was available. He didn't force anything. He was just being himself. And Lane Kiffin talked all about how Austin Simmons doesn't need to be Jackson Dart, who led college football in yards per attempt a year ago. Austin Simmons, using his processing ability, using the strengths that Austin Simmons has, he was able to move the Ole Miss offense down the field. Now, it wasn't all sunshine and roses for the Ole Miss offense over the course of the day. The offensive line struggled a little bit. I think it was Chuck Rounsaville from the Ole Miss Spirit talked about how Jaden Williams did not play in the scrimmage and Diego Pounds did not play much. So it was Devin Harper and those guys on the outside. There was some potential for some injuries. Perhaps we're waiting to follow that along. But they talked about Delano Townsend as somebody that they might be worried about as far as the people that talked to me. We don't know about that. We're going to pay attention to the next couple of practices to see how real that is. It's kind of like midweek, somebody mentioned to us that PJ Wilkins and Caleb Odom were 2 people to actually watch on the injury front. And PJ Wilkins did not play the whole scrimmage and Caleb Odom wasn't out there as well. So it's almost to the point of confirming in my own mind about that injury situation. This front seven is going to take Ole Miss as far as it can go. If Ole Miss makes the playoffs, it will be because of the front seven. The offense is going to be good. There's a ton of skill players. There was a touchdown catch from Harrison Wallace III. It was really good football over the top of what was going on. But this front seven is going to be the leadership of this team. Ole Miss is going to go only as far as that front seven will take them. Other players that stood out in the scrimmage was Damien Taylor. He is emerging as a short yardage back in the mold of J.J. Pegues. Line him up in the Wildcat, do some different stuff. His physicality running the football is pretty impressive. I was told that Kewan Lacy has basically wrapped up the running back job. I haven't seen that. I haven't confirmed that, but I was told that. And Logan Diggs did some things as well that you could be proud of. Now, this running back room is better than the running back room that was at Ole Miss a year ago, period. There's no way to get around that. And the fact that with the emergence of a Damien Taylor in the short yardage means that you're not putting a defensive lineman in the Wildcat. I think it was the Rebel Walk podcast, our boy Dalen Flowers with Zach Moreth talking about maybe Daquan Wright is working in the Wildcat as somebody who's a 250-pound guy. I don't know. I haven't heard that one except from that podcast, but I have heard about Damien Taylor doing some stuff. Maybe he is going to be the Snoop Connor for this team. Now, the offensive line, we mentioned they had some troubles, I guess, with the front seven of Ole Miss, which every offensive line is going to have that. But them being down made it a chore over the course of the day. The starters, the first group that was out there, did a pretty good job of kind of holding their own, as evidenced by Austin Simmons having a relatively big day. But the second unit kind of got overwhelmed a bit. There's more depth on the defensive side than the offensive side. So when everybody is talking about the offensive line being problematic, that is more what they're looking at. Trinidad Chambliss was running for his life for most of the day, I was told. So that is something to keep an eye on. One thing that I want to point out is our boy Dylan Alford made a big play in the scrimmage on a post pattern, a diving catch. Dylan Alford is probably the number 2 freshman that Ole Miss signed that has a chance to get on the field and get playing time behind Winnie Watkins. Dylan Alford makes play after play after play. He catches everything thrown to him, and he is an unbelievably smooth athlete. He is somebody to watch this year, even though they're extremely deep. But next year, there is a real chance that he is on the field in the first game. I am a huge Dylan Alford fan and what he can do. Now, some other stuff in the scrimmage. I saw something online. I forget where. I think it was on Twitter. They talked about there was no balls hitting the ground. Everybody was catching everything. And Ole Miss uses the modern version of a jugs machine, essentially, to catch nearly, I think, 30,000 per month. They want 30,000 footballs caught per month for everybody in the wide receiver room, and it is paying dividends if you look at the ability to catch the football from everybody. Harrison Wallace is having a big fall camp. Haven't heard that much about Deshaun Stribling, but that may just be the fact that they know what they have with Deshaun Stribling. Caden Lee made a couple of big grabs as well. This wide receiver unit is going to be very good. Now, on the injury front, they want to get potentially TJ Banks, the safety that was shot just above the knee in the Memphis situation. They want him back by Kentucky. And I think Luke Haas, they want him back before LSU. Now, want doesn't necessarily matter. You still have to do all the stuff that needs to be done to get back. But that is the timeline that I have heard on those two players. Again, this scrimmage was absolutely massive for Austin Simmons because you don't want to have two really bad ones going in to this mock game that is basically everything but the football before Georgia State. You want that good feeling. You want that confidence to brew. And it looks like Austin Simmons had just that. They had some good stuff on the running back, some good parts of the interior of the offensive line. That's big news. I didn't hear too much about Xavier Harris. That means that on the interior, they did their job a little bit. So we'll see exactly how that goes. But all in all, that was a really big scrimmage. And, hey, I'm confident on my pick for Ole Miss football, honestly, if we're going to be real about it. This season so far has been a disaster for Ole Miss when it comes to in-state recruiting. But Lane Kiffin may have taken his first big step toward fixing that problem by bringing Donte Moncrief back into the fold and simply saying, feed me. Ole Miss is trying to reconnect with its Ole Miss roots. What does that mean for the Ole Miss Rebels' future in state? We'll talk about all of that next. Listen, when I'm on top of my hydration, I notice everything works better. My energy, my mood, my focus, even my skin. But getting enough fluids a day isn't always easy. That's why I've been loving me some Drip Drop. Drip Drop is a doctor-developed and scientifically proven drink for fast hydration. I have some on the desk right now. It uses the perfect balance of sodium electrolytes and glucose to help your body absorb fluids more quickly, delivering 3 times the electrolytes and half the sugar of the leading sports drink. My go-to flavor right now is cherry limeade. It's a game changer after a workout or on those extra busy days or walking twice per day like I do in the Florida heat. It's draining, but Drip Drop is helping all of that. Right now, Drip Drop is offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first order. Just head to dripdrop.com and use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege. That's dripdrop.com, promo code LOCKEDONCollege for 20% off. Stock up now before the heat hits really hard. Lane Kiffin hiring Donte Moncrief is the first sign of a fix potentially for what has been an abject disaster for Ole Miss in-state recruiting. Nobody can talk about anything, and good players are available everywhere, and Ole Miss is doing excellent out of state, but the University of Mississippi needs to be the University of Mississippi, which means if Jace Matthews is available, he goes to the University of Mississippi. Kelvin Bolden did a fantastic job over a couple of years, landed Caleb Cunningham, landed Cam Franklin, landed Suntaran Perkins. 3 straight number 1 players, and Kelvin Bolden rightly got a lot of the credit on that. But this year, whether he was thinking about his LSU job, he did not land anyone except for 1 player in the top 15, and that's a running back out of Kemper County. He's going to be a really good player. I'm extremely happy that Ole Miss landed that player, but there's more available and more is happening in the wide receiver room with Xavier McDonald, with Tristan Keys, with Jace Matthews. There are 3 major 4-star wide receivers, and having a wide receiver that's very highly thought of in the state and not going to Ole Miss, that's absolutely weird. And we can all talk about money and all of that stuff, but at the end of the day, the last couple of years, they did a lot better in the state of Mississippi than they're doing this year. That's what happened. So Lane Kiffin had to fix that. And we mentioned on our podcast, and we know that they listen to this podcast. They follow me on Twitter, the whole 9 yards. We suggested in a podcast about a month ago that Ole Miss hires Donte Moncrief. And the reason we suggested that is it's about time that Ole Miss's Mississippi guy was an Ole Miss guy too. Because before that, Kelvin Bolden went to Southern Mississippi. Before that, Derek Nix went to Southern Mississippi. Tony Hughes, I don't think, went to Ole Miss. That was the Mississippi guy before that. So over the last 20 years, there have been 0 real Ole Miss ties on the Ole Miss coaching staff to get people to come to Ole Miss. Ole Miss needed to fix that, and they did. So Lane Kiffin hired Donte Moncrief to join the Rebel staff in a recruiting role, really similar to what Kelvin Bolden did. And this is an example of an Ole Miss player, specifically in a wide receiver, that Ole Miss sent to the league. He had a relatively long career. All of the stuff about Ole Miss, about being a star wide receiver, he knows about, and he is building a network inside of the state of Mississippi with the help of Mike Espy, with the help of Shea Hodge, to get high school coaches and everybody on the same page. This is a slam dunk hire. This is massive because The first thing that Donte Moncrief has to deal with is this. If you look at the schools where these players are committed, Braylon Womack is likely going to Auburn, by the way. Donte Moncrief's first job is to fix this list. This is the Mississippi top 15 to where Ole Miss is only available on one of them. When you look at Tristan Keys, Braylon Womack, Nolan Wilson, who we all thought Ole Miss would have a higher position on, Jace Matthews, we all thought that Ole Miss would have a higher position on as well. TJ White, he's going to Tennessee. There's a very real chance that Tristan Keys flips to Tennessee as well. Whenever you look at some of the other players in the top 15, you have Jaraylon McCoy, who Ole Miss was crystal balled back in the summer. It just went away. Demarius Yates is the Ole Miss commit. Xavier McDonald went to Sacramento State. Preston Ashley, Colorado. Tylen Wilson, Texas A&M. Darian Albert, Tennessee. Corey Wells, Texas. That's the top 12. The next Ole Miss player comes in at about number 16, and that is a problem. These players, if you can get them from that halo, it's a narrative issue. Listen, you can get Corey Barber from Alabama, who might be as good as any of the wide receivers that are on this list. You can get Jamison Young out of Sacramento, California. But when three players like this are in your backyard and you don't get them, it's a narrative problem for you. That is what Donte Moncrief is brought in to take care of, that narrative problem. Everybody talking about what's wrong with Ole Miss. This is something they can point to. Brian Kelly's using it. Kalen DeBoer is using it. Hugh Freeze is absolutely, definitely using it. What is wrong with Ole Miss and why are they struggling in SIG? That is being brought up in every meeting and it snowballs because it is real easy to tell a lie that is believable when you look at the commitment list and it's 1 out of 17 showing up. Ole Miss has to get that to 3 or 4 this year going into next year's recruiting class, or there's a high school recruiting problem going to develop. Now, Ole Miss is going to be a portal school regardless. It absolutely is. Anybody that claims that they want to do it a certain way, it doesn't matter. Ole Miss is going to be a portal school. Lane Kiffin is a better recruiter of portal athletes than he is of high school athletes, period, bar none. End of story. So the portal is always going to take precedent. But the narrative has to be stopped. That's why that's important. That narrative that turns into a real thing. If you say it over and over and over again, eventually it starts to get believed. Ole Miss cannot go 1 out of 17. They need to go 2 out of 17 or 3 out of 17. And Donte Moncrief has a couple of months to get that fixed. Willie, it might be a little bit too little too late, but he's going to try. I know he has a relationship with Jace Matthews. We will see how that goes. But when you look at this Ole Miss recruiting, it feels like the talent in the state of Mississippi is getting and becoming more and more and more. It's a lot easier to get around. People are getting noticed. There's more 4 stars, more 5 stars coming out of Mississippi. It's important for this last 6 months to close on one of those guys. Close on 2 of those guys if you can, because it will help you going into 2027. Again, Ole Miss will never be a high school dominant team. They will never be Alabama or Georgia. They just won't. If you try to do things exactly how they're doing it, they're going to get the better players and they're going to beat you. They have more money. Texas and A&M and Texas Tech, they're spending all that old money trying to get the best roster they absolutely can. You have to evaluate better than them. You have to hit the portal, though, with strength. And it's going to get harder and harder as this goes on and the portal becomes the dominant method to build your roster. But the important thing, and I always say this, if you listen to more than 3 podcasts on my channel, you've heard me say this. The thing that Lane Kiffin is best as a head coach is roster building. And hiring Donte Moncrief, which we suggested a little over a month ago, is just a step in that direction. I think Donte is going to be an absolute home run, and it should be pretty great. We got Mike Espy helping out during the football season here, so we'll see exactly how that goes. A big, big hire for Lane Kiffin. All right, in our final segment, college football is finally here this week, and that means betting lines are on the boards. From week 0 matchups to a ranked Farmageddon showdown in Ireland, of all places, we'll take a look at the numbers and have some fun with it. That and Ole Miss trivia coming up next. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family? Maybe it's game day and you suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. Ole Miss is completely sold out again. So what do? That is where Game Time comes in. The easiest way to grab last minute tickets without all of the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come along with you. So Game Time makes buying tickets faster and simple. Prices drop the closer you get to the first pitch, and they've got incredible last minute deals, clear seat views, and the lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. Game Time is the official ticketing partner of Locked On MLB, making it easy to browse the app for an exciting upcoming MLB game. So Detroit versus Houston, that is going to be the game on everybody's mind in the MLB right now. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. We finally gotten there, everybody. It is college football game week. And yes, I know there's no SEC games this weekend, but we wanted to do betting lines like we always do. We do betting lines every Monday during the SEC season and before. We just keep it going through our friends with FanDuel Sportsbook. And there are some interesting matchups this weekend. Believe it or not, this is a week 0 that everybody's going to be paying attention to. There's one score that is basically a pick 'em, and we'll see exactly how that goes. You don't know a lot about these teams in the Big 12 that have these week 0 games, but you want to see exactly how it goes because it's going to affect your team a little bit later on in the season. But let's look at the week 0 lines this weekend. And this is what we have on week 0. It starts off with a ranked Farmageddon matchup between Iowa State and Kansas State in Ireland, of all places. I have no idea how they're going to get the tractors out there to Ireland. But if they don't have a tractor at the game, seriously, an inflatable or whatever, something like that, they missed an opportunity. Kansas State's favored by 3.5 points over the Iowa State Cyclones in the first college football game of the season. I saw the quarterback, I think Avery Johnson's his name, at the Under Armour All-American game. He's a really good player. He has a chance to be extremely good. Iowa State has questions, but Matt Campbell always has them ready to go. And this is one of those evenly matched Big 12 games that you just need to pay attention to. It's going to be a good football game. You remember last year it was Florida State and Georgia Tech playing in Ireland. This year it's going to be Iowa State and Kansas State, and they're going to be duking it out. But Kansas State's a 3.5 point favorite. UNLV is favored by 25.5 points over Iowa State. This is an FCS game. UNLV playing. This is Dan Mullen's first game, and they have a bunch of last chance U type players. So there's the boom or bust potential for the UNLV running Rebels. You pay attention to what they have on the defensive side of the ball. They could be really good. They legitimately could be really good. But if they bust, they could bust really hard and go like 2-10. So this is way up, way down, but they should handle the Idaho State. I think they're the Tigers or the Bengals pretty easily. Another pretty decent game. You got the Kansas Jayhawks hosting the Fresno State Bulldogs. Kansas is a 12.5 point favorite for a game in Lawrence. It's kind of weird that in week 0, both of the Kansas teams are playing that weekend, but we'll digress on that one. But Kansas just got a $300 million gift from the Booth family, whose name is already on the stadium. They just remodeled that stadium to make it look a little bit more model. Kansas feels like they're all in football. So we'll see what happens. Kansas and Missouri plays in week like 3 or something like that. That's a big game. Those are two schools with legit hatred for each other. If you don't watch many games this season, watch Kansas and Missouri because that's a fun one to go. Next, Sam Houston State is at Western Kentucky. The Hilltoppers are favored by 9.5 points. This is one of those low-level games. I think this might be a conference game for Conference USA, if I'm not mistaken. But I think Sam Houston State is in that league now. I don't know with all the moving around and the realignment in college football. But Western Kentucky's favored by 9.5 points. And closing out the night, San Diego State is favored by 15 points, and they are hosting Stony Brook. Stony Brook and San Diego State going at it. So it should be pretty good. Should be really good. All right. So our trivia question for the day before we get out of here. Today in Ole Miss Trivia, we're talking about 1997 Arkansas. In the Rebels' 19-9 victory over the Arkansas Razorback, it was rather nondescript as far as a game, as far as being a way stop on the road to starting a rise as a program and getting back to a bowl game, which they did that year going to the Motor City Bowl. But that game also featured the longest run in Ole Miss football history. Who made that run that night that led to a 19-9 victory over the Arkansas Razorback? Put your answer in the comments below. We'll put out the answer on socials a little bit later on today. Thank you for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your go-to source for Ole Miss sports. We pride ourselves on offering the most comprehensive perspectives, which is why we are the front door of Ole Miss. If you don't believe me, Google Ole Miss podcast and see how much our show comes up. We're like 80% of that page. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel or the podcast on audio if that's the way you're listening to it. Like it, comment. It helps the show. It's completely free. Your support means the world to us. For your second listen, check out the Portal Show. Brian Smith has the latest rumors, portal entries, and signings. Be the most informed fan on all of the rapid changes to college football's landscape. Find the Portal on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Hotty toddy, everybody. And remember, analytics is just the old English word that means bad football. We'll see you tomorrow.